potential.
Oral questions to the Minister of State at the Cabinet Office, the Earl of Kinnoul.
I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
Frost.
My Lords, I announced on the 14th of September a pragmatic new timetable for introducing certain controls for goods imported from the EU to the UK to give businesses more time to adjust. These controls will be introduced in 2 stages, on the 1st of January and the 1st of July. The Government continues to support all businesses trading with the EU in all sectors, including putting in place additional staffing, comprehensive guidance for businesses and funding infrastructure to ease border processes.
In February 2020, the Government indicated that full border controls on EU imports would commence on the 1st of January 2021. In June 2020, the Government announced that many controls would instead be phased in, with mixed deadlines from April to July 2021. In March 2021, the Government delayed the introduction of this mix of controls further, with phases from October 2021 to March 2022. And earlier this week, just 3 weeks before the first part of the mix was due to be implemented, the Government announced yet another delay, with phases from January to July 2022. 3 times now, businesses have spent time and no doubt money preparing for key deadlines, and 3 times have seen the can kicked down the road. Can I ask the Noble Lord the Minister, what steps will the Government take to restore business confidence in its timetable for import controls, and will it compensate businesses for their wasted efforts?
So, my Lords, it has of course been an extraordinary year to 18 months. Economically, we've been dealing with a pandemic of unpredictable quality, and it's very clear that there are global strains on supply chains and other aspects of the business environment. So that's why we do not apologise for taking this series of pragmatic decisions to respond to the evolving situation. We've no plans to evolve these changes further, and the money that businesses have already spent in dealing with the situation will be well spent.
Lord Grantchester.
Experiences of déjà vu are not becoming uncommon in this Government's implementation in its own EU plans, despite repeated assurances. This means that Britain will continue to face full checks and controls on its exports, as it did from day one, while imports will continue with border-free access. Supply chain problems resolve around massive labour shortages. To keep Christmas dinner on the table, will the Government now introduce a 12-month emergency visa implementation, and can the Government give assurances that extending agreements on the provision of veterinary services and updating paper health certificates online will become part of the solution to guard against potential risks of disease and infections?
So, my Lords, we face a complex set of interacting economic facts at the moment, and the decision that we took responds to that. We maintain the controls that are right for us, and we now have the powers to control and manage our own economy as we see fit. We do not have to do the same thing as the European Union, and indeed, after the 1st of July, we're unlikely to have exactly the same levels of physical checks as the EU. So we monitor the situation in all its respects, and we will take the decisions that are necessary to support the British economy.
Lord Purvis of Tweed.
But, my Lords, the Government on the 21st of July published its new border operating model, where on page 8 it gives a commentary about how it's taken into consideration the impacts of COVID as the reasons why it had made the delays already. So what has happened in the intervening 7 weeks between the 21st of July and now that allows the Government to think that it is still not ready at its ports?
So, my Lords, I think it has been very evident over the early autumn that there are challenges with maintaining supply chains. They're not limited to the UK. There are shortages of HGV drivers across Europe and beyond. There are very significant increase in costs globally in shipping of goods, and these strains have become evident over the summer, and we've taken a pragmatic decision to respond to that and to do what we can to support British business in these circumstances.
Lord Moylan.
My Lords, I welcome this delay, and indeed I hope that it becomes permanent. EU goods are safe, the food is wholesome. We have been using them and eating it for 40 years. Trade rules do not need to be reciprocal, and if the European Union chooses stupidly to impose upon its consumers the penalties of protectionism, there is no need why we should reciprocate. Does my noble friend agree that it's about time the British government was setting a free trade example to the European Union, and indeed showing them that such an approach could be applied with benefit on the UK's border with Ireland in place of the undemocratic protocol?
So, my Lords, I think our position on the protocol is well known, and we may come to it later. My noble friend is absolutely right, of course, to say that it makes sense for us to put in place the controls that are right for us. There are, of course, controls. Customs controls came in on the 1st of January, but we do not have to replicate everything the European Union does. We intend to have a world-class border by 2025 with proportionate checks based on risk, and that's the right way to proceed.
My Lords, yesterday my noble friend Lord Adonis shared with us a 6-year-old photograph of a very slimline David Frost, saying that the whisky industry needed the fewest possible barriers in order to sell into European markets. Now that's what business still wants, but the government doesn't seem to listen, despite the fact that surely they must be involved in the design of the procedures and not just told at the end, this is what you must implement. Now, next week, almost a year after the trade agreement was signed, the Minister's consultation on engagement with business closes. So can he assure the House he'll respond rapidly to that, and he'll put in place a really robust system of consultation with business, but also with unions and consumers?
I thank the noble Baroness for this question. She's of course correct that our consultation on involving industry and civil society more generally in the implementation of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement closes shortly, and of course we will be responding soon. We do need to get these bodies up and running before the end of the year, and that's absolutely the intention to do so. I think as a general principle, it is right that the fewest possible controls are always best. I think that's clear, and of course we're not always in control of the controls which the European Union put in place. We do believe that the benefits of being outside the customs union and in control of our own trade policy very much outweigh any disadvantages.
Macintosh, Pickering.
Well, of course, the greatest free market was the single market, which we very sadly left. My noble friend negotiated very successfully the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. Will he use his good offices to ensure that this world-class border, which we would all welcome, will lead to a single portal for documentation, which will be largely online? And if he finds that we have trained most of the EU drivers that have left and gone back to their respective countries, could we at least give them a short-term visa to come back and help us out over the Christmas period, as the noble Lord Grantchester suggested we might be in need of?
Why do they want to come here?
My Lords, I agree, of course, with my noble friend that an aspiration for a world-class border is very important. That's where we intend to go. And indeed, the so-called single trade window, a single portal, will we hope, be a very significant part of that as we take this forward. As regards HGV drivers, my right honourable friend, Secretary of State for Transport, has, I think, set out on a couple of occasions our plans to make it easier to increase the supply of drivers, and I'm sure that will bear fruits very soon.
Baroness Smith, Newnham. Last weekend, I left the United Kingdom for the first time since the end of the transition period. I went to France, I got in very easily, I showed my passport, my vaccine pass, and that was it. To come back, it looked like a world-class border when I got to Stansted because I just showed my electronic passport. But to get there, I had to fill in numerous forms which the airline was expected to verify. Is the government proposing to keep that sort of regulation going? Because surely that is a deterrent to tourism and other people coming to the United Kingdom, which surely a world-class country would be wanting, not trying to discourage.
My Lords, I'm sure we all share the aspiration for as free-flowing borders as we possibly can. Obviously, we are dealing with the consequences of a pandemic, and that does require controls and processes that in an ideal world would not want to be in place, and that matter is very much debated elsewhere, I think. I repeat my point that we wish to see goods and people flow as freely as is possible, consistent with maintaining responsible border controls of all kinds, and that's what we intend to put in place.
My Lords, all supplementary questions